which is, hi, I'm Owen Martin. I'm from Troop 4018, Greenfield, New York. I'm working with the Veterans Breakfast Club to interview veterans as part of my EGO project. Here I am with Staff Sergeant Donato, and I guess we can get started. So,
Is actually retired as a gunny?
oh,
No,
sorry.
no, that was from the probably from the award there.
Yeah, that. Mhm.
Yeah.
So, I guess start off very basic. What part of the Marines were you involved in, and when did you join?
So I joined the Marines in 2001 while I was still in high school. Before 9/11 happened. 9/11 happened while I was in boot camp, so wasn't really expecting that. But I originally joined to be part of the air wing. Joined as an aviation electrician. Went to school to be an avionics electronics guy. Kind of worked on some hardware, software troubleshooting. But then after a couple twists and turns in the Marine Corps, I went EOD, explosive ordnance disposal.
All right. Yeah, I do have a couple questions about 9/11, and I know you joined August 2001, correct? Just a little month
Yes.
before.
Right.
So, what was it like during boot camp when that happened? I'm sure there was probably a lot of new recruits, and did you know what you were really signing up for as soon as that happened?
Uh, it was it was quite the experience. When I joined boot camp, I had actually started to get a hernia, and so that was something that had been causing me a lot of pain, and I had to go to the drill instructors and let them know, hey, at the time this recruit was, I think I have a hernia. So I was actually on the hospital bed recovering from that surgery when the first plane hit the tower,
Wow.
and a nurse ran in, turned on the TV, and said, "You guys got to look at this. We're going to war." And watched as that second plane hit in there, and as it kind of unfolded, uh, it was absolutely not what I expected. It was, I joined. I think part of the things on there that I put on, they show you these cards. They're like, "Well, why do you want to join the Marine Corps?" I said, "Well, education and travel and discipline." Nothing in there has anything to do with going to war, right? So, um, but hey, that's how life goes.
Yeah. I know you did two deployments to Afghanistan. What were the dates of those around?
So the first one was on the 26th MU, and we left, I believe it was October 2010, and we got back sometime in April of 2011. But during that deployment, we were in Afghanistan from pretty much January 1st, 2011 until April of 2011. The second deployment was 13 TAC 2, and that was again August timeframe of 2013 into April timeframe of 2014.
If you could recall, what percentage of IEDs versus conventional ordnance did you really encounter on calls?
So conventional ordnance was something that we didn't quite see as much in Afghanistan. It was something that we definitely trained for a lot in our workups before the deployments, because we did see that in Iraq a lot. However, once we moved into Afghanistan, IEDs were the primary weapon of choice. They would do complex ambushes where they would set us up to take cover into an IED field or progress after them after IEDs. But I'd say maybe only 5 to 10% of what I encountered in Afghanistan was conventional.
Wow. Well, I do know that robots really can't diffuse an improvise one because they don't know how to really do it. So a lot of it was done by hand, right?
Yeah, and with the robots, we were just in an area during a portion of that deployment that it wasn't accessible to vehicles. We do have some great technology with a lot of the robots that we use, but they're all being man operated. There were some people that would bring them into those areas and carry them on their backs, but we're talking to 80 to 300-pound robots that it just wasn't realistic to have in the areas that we were patrolling.
Did you do any training with the Afghan police or army?
Yes, it did.
Was it worth your time?
I think it absolutely was. It was a very interesting experience. It was really during the 2013 deployment. One of the specific things during that time frame was enabling the Afghan army to work for itself, right? To be able to deal with the things that they're encountering with. So I was part of a team of 3 techs that went to the ANA side of Leatherneck, which was the big base in Afghanistan. And we taught classes to them on basic IED detecting and very simple diffusing techniques for anything under 40 pounds of net explosive weight. It was, it was very interesting. We went down there with armed guards. We carried our weapons with us all the time. It was during a time that there was insider threats where, they would pretend to be ANA and carry out attacks, as imposters, So it was very interesting, but I think it was a good time, and I hope that I taught them well.
Well, so I know I have friends who wear glasses, and I know they complain about whenever they wear masks during the pandemic, it gets all foggy. What's it
Yeah.
like? Did you wear glasses at all when you were ever inside a suit?
Yes, it's one of the things that 99% of the EOD techs that you see, if they do wear glasses, they end up getting surgery that's provided by the military. My eyesight's not good enough to be eligible for those surgeries. So that was a big thing. I've never actually operated in the bomb suit. I've practiced in it, I've trained in it, but even as far as deployment goes, we have to wear goggles because the sandstorms, the sand that's going around, helmets, the night vision goggles, NVGs coming down over your eye created a lot of fog. So it really was, it was difficult at times to deal with that. You get sweat in there, and yes.
So I know you said you didn't wear the bomb suit, but what percentage of your EOD calls were performed without a robot or bomb suit?
So majority of my calls that I did were on that first deployment. We had several on the second deployment, but probably only 10% of the calls that I did had the robot available to us. So 90% of them were done hands-on or through remote procedures. It's when you're working on an IED, you want to be next to it as little as possible because you never really know what's going to happen. The longer you stay around it, the more likely you are to make a mistake. So we did stuff that while we couldn't use robots, we would use hook and line techniques where we would just carry a reel of rope and some tools to hook on to different portions of it. And we use that to take multiple actions on it, whether it be to cut out a battery, cut off a pressure switch, pull out the jug. We try to do as many things as possible in that one approach. So it was quite a few of them were, eventually on every call that we do, we put feet on ground. I think that's one of the most important things of when you're working is if I'm going to tell a unit that they can move forward, while you never promise them that it's clear, I think that it's very important for me to physically be in the place that I'm telling them they can go, if that makes sense.
Do you have any personal stories from your two deployments that you can basically retell by heart?
I could probably go through by heart any one of the IEDs. I got a bunch of pictures of them. I know that you had asked for some. Maybe I can send some at another time. I'm trying to think of. So there was one that I worked pretty closely with the engineers. The engineers were the lead sweepers. They carried the metal detectors and they led the patrols. During that time frame, that 2010 2011 time frame, our tactics were to walk in a single file line with 10 to 20 feet of dispersion in between each one of us. That dispersion is to prevent your patrol getting bunched up, to make it an easy target. If you get bunched up and you get hit by an IED, then it's more casualties. So it was our responsibility to stay in line with them. But he was going through a field, and every time we told him, don't use bridges, don't use crosswalks, don't use anything that it looks like that's where you would go, because that's obviously where it's targeted. But he was leading through and sweeping the other side of this ditch. It was a good 5 or 6 foot deep ditch. It was an irrigation canal, but he went out on the other side and he started uncovering what looked like a plastic jug with a high metallic signature on it. So he called us out, and turns out he got really lucky, and he had found like a 5-gallon jug of an oil can. They use these 5-liter jugs it's like a yellow jug, but it was full of Dishka rounds, which is it's a foreign version, very similar to the 50 cal. So it's a very large caliber machine gun. It's an anti-vehicle weapon, and it was something that we were pretty, it wasn't, we weren't very excited to hear that they had one in the area. So it was a jug of that, but on either side of it, there was a pressure plate IED, and in every one of the other crossings for that ditch, if he had gotten out at any other point, right in between each one of those trees, it was just a tree line, and in between each one of the trees was a pressure plate attached to a 5-pound IED. We ended up pulling out 4 jugs out of there that each had about 5 pounds of HME inside of there. And we also pulled out 3 large, what we would call a cache of those Dishka rounds that we were able to destroy on site. So that was an interesting call.
Wow. Any else really that just like impacts you think about often? Doesn't have to be a sad story or anything, just something.
It's just one of the impactful things about that was we were out there. When you're in the military, you don't have a whole lot of choices for what you're doing, right? You know that, hey, my personal beliefs are not really what's driving things, so you're out there doing a job. We had a bunch of casualties. We lost three or four of the guys that we were out there, lost limbs. I did several calls where I had to pick up pieces of my buddies. But it was when we left out of there and then the next group came in, like we just pulled out of that area and it just was given back, so it was a kind of a big slap in the face. We had a lot of sacrifices to gain that area.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that we did make a difference. There was a couple of instances, where we we were requested to go down there. Um, Mosques are obviously a very important thing in their culture. Um, so it's one of the things that we're not allowed to go into. We're not allowed to go into as U.S. Military. We don't do anything with mosques. It's a non-combatant um, building. There was a couple that I actually got to go to where the Taliban had been setting up as communication shops, and they asked us, "Hey, we can't use our mosque because they're using it and they've got IEDs around it." So they invited us to that to have us clear that out. So we did get to work with a lot of good people. So you see a lot of thankful faces, and you realize that there's two boogeymen in the story. The Taliban that is there, that's very real, and when we come in and we say that, hey, we're here to help you, they don't know if we're really there to help them. So it's a difficult place to be in, but I wouldn't take it back.
By that, I'm sure you're talking about the citizens. And I know other wars, the citizens really never asked for help exactly, but were there those who were generous of you being there a good amount?
Absolutely. One of the things that is, it's hard for us to comprehend it, but we're talking about an area that is, it's not, there's no telephone wires, there's no electric wires going from house to house. We're talking about people who have D-cell batteries taped together to power lights in their houses. They only have shortwave radios. They only have AM radios. So their communication, their ability to know what's going on outside of their small communities is very limited unless they're going to the bazaars and stuff like that. We encountered some villages where they thought that we were the Russians because they never heard that this was over for them. So it's weird to look at it like that, but there were definitely a lot of people there that were very thankful for us. They came out to be like Casevac sites and paid their honors and paid their respects to stuff. So there are a lot of good people out there.
Yeah, on the topic of mosques, I know in America we can't really understand how like precious and how old that stuff is.
Right.
Our oldest building here could only be 600 years old while those there could be 2000.
Right.
It's really
Yeah.
old. And I know like the Vietnam War, they would hide in Cambodia. Was that, would they usually seek refuge in the mosques knowing you couldn't really enter there?
It was a common practice. Like I said, they had their communication center set up in a room that was next to a mosque. It was, they played some dirty tricks, because what the people see back here, back at home, is only what is shown to them by whatever's out there, right? And naturally, they tend to focus on civilian deaths. They focus on children deaths. And while I never want to take away the importance of keeping those in mind, it was also a common thing that while we're watching, them build bombs in an area and train people, like they'll send kids out to show that, hey, there's kids in the area. It's like, okay, well, now we can't do anything against that. So, and that was their reasons for it. So using tactics like that was very common.
Hollywood can try and recreate it all they want, but I'm sure it sounds a lot different over there from over here. And anytime that those sounds just come back to you almost as a form of PTSD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now you never know when you really are thinking about it, when it kind of comes up and slaps you in the face, you know. So
And are you a part of any support groups uh, from fellow Marines like yourself? Or
um yeah, I go to counseling. I was part of I was active in the Intrepid Spirit on Camp Lejeune. It's their TBI center. They've got some state of the top of the line, state of the art studies going on there that really kind of get out of the normal techniques. You know, I did art therapy for a while, where it was just nice to associate things with stuff that you can put on the paper, or whatever medium you're using. But it was also a good time to let any stressors around you out and just kind of focus on what's important, what's right in front of you, and that's the art. So it was pretty helpful.
Mhm.
And like just before this, I was on a there's a VA coaching system that they provide for people who are recently out of the military, because they know that that transition is a very difficult time. And we just set up a time that they call and they ask questions like, hey, how's this going? Have you heard anything from this appointment? Have you heard anything from this appointment? How's this working out for you? How's your day-to-day life going? um, One of the other really valuable things that I have available to me is staying in the area in North Carolina. There's three other techs, that EOD techs, that live in the neighborhood, whether they're retired or they're active duty. Um, we hang out quite a bit, and that is a very strong support network. So I'm thankful for that.
I'm sure any bomb situation is extremely tense. Is there like nothing you could compare to being in a hot situation like that almost?
So it's yes, it's a dangerous job. You know, it's like uh, you can't look at it and deny that. But I think that I like to reference to people that we do things in our day-to-day life that could verily result in death, right? You cross the road, but what do? As a small child, you learn, stop, look both ways again, and then you walk, right? There's mitigating factors that we do in everyday life. We spent hundreds and thousands of hours of repetitious just activity thinking about this and doing this and training about it. So being on top of an IED for me was one of the quietest, most, like, everything kind of slows down. You get hyper focused, and you have to shut out everything. Like, before you ever leave the truck, before you ever take a step down range, you you center yourself, and you know that there's a very good chance that you're not going to come back. But you use that and you get into the zone. It's like you start looking at everything around you, and everything's an indicator. Whether it's a dead piece of grass, or a little chunk of browning, or there's a trash piece that wasn't there yesterday, or it looks weird. You know, all of these little things are just things that you pick up on. So kind of talked away from you talking about the what was what was your original question again? Sorry.
No, that was one I really like that. Thank you.
Okay.
You answered it. Um, is there anything else you really want to talk about? Anything I should know, or anyone else?
Um, it's a good question. It's for any other veterans out there. The programs haven't always been the best, and I know that a lot of people run into pressure. They run into issues when they're trying to get help. I encourage them that there is help out there, and there's a lot of people that care. For every system that doesn't work very well, there's probably 5 people in that system. You know, there's dozens of people. There's hundreds of people that are willing to help. It's not a weakness. It's not. It's nothing belittling of yourself. And I think that it's important that we spread that, and we just get that awareness out that, you know, it's something that is a result of what we did. And there's help out there. There's a lot of good people.
I've run out of questions, or you've answered them. So, I don't
That's a
know.
good thing, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time and your service. I really appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
No
So,
problem. If you ever have any other questions, you know what I mean? Like, if you think of things that after you go through this and you watch it, feel free to reach out to me again. I don't work.
mhm.
So.